there was always that sort of gender inequality. People always felt pity when there was a daughter being born in a family. A big issue in Bangladesh is child marriage.
Thank you. Um, okay, so I'll start off with letting you tell me a little bit about yourself. I know that you have a couple of financial certifications. You also wrote a book. So tell me a little bit more.
Yes, so my name is Urmi, and I work in the financial sector. I am the holder of the CFA charter as well as the CAIA charter. So both of them, they stand for Charter Financial Analyst, and the second one stands for Charter Alternative Investment Analyst. I do this on my day-to-day job. I work in finance, and then I have a lot of passions, which I tend to work on them basically, as I like to call them, during my 5 to 9.
Mhm.
And basically, I am a self-published author, speaker, YouTuber, blogger, mentor, and big advocate of women's empowerment. I am currently part of two organizations. The first one is called Women in Leadership, and I am the social media lead. And the second one is called Femme Influence, and I am the campaign manager.
Okay, that's awesome. So tell me a little bit more about the book that you wrote. What was the
Yeah,
process like?
yes. So it's called Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle. And basically, I self-published it about 3 years ago. I would say actually it was 3 years ago in 2022, July 2022. And basically, it was a self-publishing process. So it was pretty easy. Basically, you didn't need a publisher to go through. You just had to like have the book ready, have a cover page, a title, basically everything that you need for a book, and then you just
Mhm.
had to upload it on Amazon. And the whole process, how it started, was by me talking to a friend who also self-published a book, and he suggested me to read a book called How to Write a Book in 30 Days.
Okay.
So that's how it started. I was on vacation and I was reading that book, and I was just like when I came back I was just like writing down basically every chapter, and then I found someone on Fiverr, a freelancer, who has helped me to basically format it, edit it, and after like edit the whole editing part and formatting part, it was basically ready to be published. And it really took me like at the end, it took me 6 weeks, but to write it, it took me really 4 weeks.
Okay. Okay, that's not very long. That didn't take you very long. So what really do you go over in the book?
So basically, it's the book is about my life in Italy as a third culture kid. So basically, both of my parents are from Bangladesh, and I was born and raised in Italy.
Oh.
And so I talk about how it was my life in Italy from a perspective of a South Asian woman, and how it was for me to grow up in a very Western society. And so the book is really about a comparison and a contrast between the two cultures, the Italian and the Bengali culture. And I talk about it from my own perspective as a South Asian woman and how I experienced it while I was growing up. Because I could see how it was for me, in a sense that, I was going in a completely Catholic school, but then at home we were like typical Muslim family. So there was that was the first contrast. I would see how my female friends were treated by her parents versus how I was treated. As a brown girl, some of the things that you hear are, oh, what would people say? Things like that. So I talk about that in the book.
Tell me a little bit more about what was the difference really between how the girls were treated around you, and how you were treated at home, like as a South Asian woman. I've had these experiences as well, like the what will people say and stuff. I've been fortunate enough to not have that directly from my parents. But there's obviously, when you live in a brown family, it's outside
Yeah.
influence all the time, right? So, what was
Yeah.
that like for you?
So I grew up always hearing that sentence, like, what would people say?
Mhm.
Always. I remember that, like every time I wanted to go out, it was an issue because, what will people say? If you go out and the perception that people might have about you. I could see that a lot of my friends had a lot more freedom. Like they could, go out, come home at a certain time. No one would question them too much. Um, Even when it came, like, let's say dating, was they had a lot more freedom. They could date outside of the community, bring their boyfriends at home. Like me, was like out of question. Having that open relationship with your parents and talking about, things that go through. It's hard, I would say, from brown parents. There's always like a separation, I would say,
Yeah.
like you don't openly speak to them as if they were your best friends.
Hmm.
So that was another, contrast. The same thing was like in the outfits, like in like, let's say, coming from a typical, Muslim family, you could not wear certain things. You always had to be like you had to wear like modest. You had to be modest in the way you were dressing up. Whereas, let's say, in the Italian culture or Western culture, it's much more different.
Hmm.
So those were some of the things I could notice. I mean, for you, it was different. Like if your parents said, okay, like no white guy, but then we will see about it. Let's say after high school, like for me, it was like nothing. We will choose
Okay.
it for you.
Like
Yeah,
never.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So do you live with your parents now or do you live alone?
No, my parents live in UK. I live in Canada. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Okay. So what got you involved in women's advocacy and stuff? Like I'm doing my bachelor's in women's studies.
Oh,
So, yeah, so
okay.
for me, one of the main things was domestic violence in the South Asian community, right? That's been a huge thing for me, even seen it like everywhere, right? It's so, so common in a South Asian community, in a South Asian household, that people don't really realize that it's not okay. Um, but what got you involved?
Basically for me it was my own personal
Hmm.
experience, unlike how I would see how women or girls were treated in a family. There was always that sort of gender inequality. Like if you're a boy, you have better treatment, or if you're a girl, you have, worse treatment, I would say. And I could see how people always felt pity when there was a daughter being born in a family. And those couple of times that I went to Bangladesh, I could see how like girls were always seen as a financial burden, and the biggest concern was, okay, who will get married, who will take care of them, who will get married to the daughter. And that was always like, why are we not teaching them about independence, living independently, being independent, being financially independent, all things like that. And that's how I was like, okay, I think we need to change that. I think we need to change the narrative and also teach girls and women that, you can get the same kind of treatment regardless of your gender. And so that's why I joined, women in leadership, family influence, because I think it's important to teach those things. And a big issue, like you talked about domestic violence, but a big issue in Bangladesh is child marriage.
Right.
And unfortunately, it's still big. You see, families where they have a daughter of a certain age, less than 18, typically, you can have girls aged between 12 to 15 and they're married and they know nothing about life. They, forced to get married to someone who's like double or triple their age. And often they have to, like, help at home, bury a child and things like that, bear a child and things like that. Um, and I joined a couple of organizations that actually fight child marriages, and it's nice to see that there are organizations fighting that, but it's still a big problem. And unfortunately, gender inequality is still a big issue around the world.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree with you there. That's one of the bigger things that I learned through my degree is that it's not just South Asian countries as well. It's countries really all around the world where women, like, there's always going to be gender roles. I don't think that that's something that we can fully combat, even though we want to. But at the same time, they may not be the same.
Hmm.
I think around the world, it's like a common thing that women give birth. Women are the ones taking time off from work, or they're the ones staying home with the kids. Even in Canada, right? Maternity leave is more common than paternity leave.
Hmm.
And they take more time off than a father may. Even if the child doesn't necessarily need the mother, like physically they don't really need the mother, it's still women usually taking more time off. I think
Yeah.
that that's something that should be talked about more.
Like some of the things I also do, like you spoke about domestic violence, which is also pretty common in South Asian families, but I think no one ever talks about those things.
Mm.
And I also think some people just stick to a relationship because they think it's fine, and because there is not enough conversation about these things to normalize this and to
Mhm.
actually talk about the consequences. And another thing that I do is mentoring, and I mentor a lot of South Asian girls because I feel like being South Asian, we always go through a certain struggle that other women from a different ethnicity do not go through. And I feel like if if you mentor someone from your same cultural background, you're able to guide them better than having someone who's not from your same cultural background.
Mhm.
So one thing I've been doing is also mentoring girls and women who are South Asian, especially because I feel like we don't have enough of that. We don't have enough representation of this kind of, of us basically.
Yeah, yeah, of course, I completely agree with that. If you had to say one thing, I know it's like a big ask. You can't really condense it down to one, but if you had to say one thing to girls that are watching this, just young South Asian girls that maybe around like high school, what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's very like I can give you a list of things, but honestly, I mean, it's very broad what I'm going to say, but I think following your dreams is probably one thing I would tell them, because I think that women or girls or South Asian women were typically, I would say, our life is typically dictated by people's opinions and expectations.
Mhm.
And often we give up on our dreams because we just want to follow what our parents are telling us, because that's what they think is the right thing, that's what they think is our path. But we're not often told to believe in our dreams. Whereas I feel like if it was a boy, it was different. So I would definitely tell them to believe in their dreams and to live boldly their lives.
Hey, that's advice that I would have yearned to hear when I was in high school for sure. So I know that you can't really talk about the financial sector and you can't give financial advice, but can you tell me why that was like the career path that you chose? I know you're really into advocacy and also you're very into public speaking. So why did you end up choosing finance as a career path instead of that?
Um, I always say like finance was love at first sight for me.
Hmm.
Um, and to be honest, I was never exposed to finance during my high school, like never exposed to it, never thought about I was going to be in finance. But then what happened is when I was enrolled in university, finance was my minor and international business was my major. And I did not like international business. Like I did few classes and I was like, okay, this is common sense. This is boring. I don't like it. And so I was like, okay, I want to change it and I want to see if I like finance as a major. So I took a class, and then what happened is I was just like, okay, this is it. I enjoyed the class from the first instant. I enjoy listening to my professors. I was like, okay, it really felt like it was love at first sight. And then I made it become my major, and I could see that I was very much enjoying the whole process. Like I was studying for it, we like effortlessly. Like for me, listening to the teachers, going to classes, writing the exam was easy. Like it was just so effortless for me, and I could see how this was this was shown in my grades, like my grades, like I could see that that love was translated in my grades. It allowed me to also get into the honors program. And then once I graduated, I remember that was like a sad day for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna stop studying. But then, I was lucky enough that I've been working for many companies that always offer educational assistance. So I pursued further education because I also like to think that education does not stop in a classroom. It's something that continues along your life. I like to believe in the concept of a lifelong learner. And I pursued the CFA afterwards, and then I pursued also the CAIA designation, and I continued to do certifications in the financial sector because, like I said, I think, you never stop evolving and you never stop learning.
I think once you realize that this is it, everything else is just so easy. Nothing really seems to stop you.
I mean, I think if you choose, if you do what you love, it's gonna be
Mhm.
easy.
Mhm.
And if you embark on a journey, on a career journey that it's what you want it to do, it will always be easy. It's always going to be a pleasant journey. And that's how I feel about it. Like, I feel like, unlike many other people, I can say that I'm definitely doing what I studied. So
Yeah, and I say this all the time is that I don't think at this point I'm doing anything that I don't like.
there we go.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And you get to decide what you want to do, right? Like
hmm
you decide what you want to do. You decide it based on your priorities, based on your time. And I think even if you might be doing a lot of things, I'm not sure how many things you're doing, but based on what I hear, you're doing a lot of things. It's always about being able to manage it properly. And I think that if you're not, burning yourself, or stressing yourself about something and you're able to manage it, then everything is achievable.
I completely agree with you. So, in terms of your career path, did your parents have any oversight on this or
No, to
yeah.
be honest, no, not from my parents, but it did come from other family members where they told me, "Oh yeah, I think she should become a lawyer."
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, it was never a thing I wanted to do. Like it never crossed my mind. I was like, I'm not into this. And I think like one of my uncles said lawyer just because
You're
he
good at talking back.
no, no, it wasn't even that, to be honest. It was not even that. I think he just said it because there are only three paths in the South Asian community, which
Yeah.
is doctor, engineer, and lawyer. And so he said lawyer out of nowhere. But I was like, you're not even asking me if I like it or not, or if this is something I want to do. And he
hmm
kept saying, oh yeah, you should become a lawyer. And then he kept saying that to my parents. I was like, okay, my parents are not gonna have a say about it. And luckily my parents never told me about this. Like they never pushed me towards a certain career. Um, I think they always gave me the freedom to choose what I wanted to do. And even before choosing finance, there was different pathways that I had in my mind. Like I initially thought I was going to become a therapist. I was like, yeah, I like listening to people's, issues and guiding them and things like that. And I always picture myself being in those offices where you have the
Yeah.
therapist and then they're like taking notes and then you have the patient on the sofa laying down telling all their problems. How I always picture myself. But then I was
Yeah.
like, I think I'm just like, I was like, okay, there is no way I want to do this. Like, I thought about it. And then I even thought of becoming a tourist guide at some point.
Wow.
Especially because I was living in Italy. So, Italy is a very touristic place. And I was like, okay, I can speak multiple languages. So, why not? But then I was also not sure if this is what I wanted to do, to be honest. Like, I never saw myself like it was like something temporary that came across my mind, but I was never sure about it. And then when I moved to Canada, I did international business, and then I realized that I did not like it, and I felt like finance was the right thing. That's when I was sure that this is it, this is what I want to do.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
If you could say what was something that you were really missing that you would miss now looking back at your university days?
Something that I'm missing now,
Yeah.
definitely how do you call it, like being it's not I want to say thoughtless, but it's not thoughtless, like not having those when you're in university, like life is so like easy,
Mm-hmm.
and then when you
You're not
become
worried
an
about bills and stuff
yeah,
like that, right? Yeah, real life
like
hasn't kicked in.
yeah, so that's the thing, like you're not worried about anything and you
Yeah.
live carefree,
Mm-hmm.
stress-free, all these things. So I feel like this is one thing that I'm missing right now too. That
Yeah.
particular moment of not being stressed about anything. And then, when you start working, adulthood really hits and you have to be really serious about everything and all the decisions that you make.
Yeah.
But yeah, being a student is very easy. I always tell that to people, like, be a student as long as you can. Don't rush into graduating. Don't think that, working is so much easier, because life as a worker
Yeah.
can get
Yep.
mundane.
I completely agree with you. I think Um, for at least in my family, I'm not sure about other Brown families, one of the things has been just finish grade 12 and then life will get better. Just finish grade 12 and then it
No.
doesn't. It doesn't. It gets worse and worse and worse.
It does not. Exactly, it does
Yeah.
not. I feel
I
like it
was
just
I was
gets
talking to
worse.
my parents about this morning as well, and I was saying it's such a scam that you keep telling us to finish grade 12 and then life will get better. We'll get to go off to university and stuff, right? And for me, I got into almost every university that I applied to. So I applied to the top five in Canada, got into all of them. I wanted to go to U of T, and my dad said, "We're not going." And I said, "What? I'm not going." So we had a back and forth, and he was like, "Okay, for leaving, then I'm coming with you." I'm very, very close to him.
Okay,
So, and I'm also the oldest daughter.
I
Um,
get it.
and he's like the complete opposite of the kind of person that would be like, "Oh my God, I have a daughter." He's somebody that like prides himself on having two daughters. And so when I said, okay, I want to leave and I want to go to U of T, and he was like, absolutely not. I'm going to come with you.
I get it. You said you're the oldest one among two siblings.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I'm the oldest one, and we're two sisters only.
Okay. Yeah. Same thing here. Do you feel like, because I do, do you feel like you have to be like 100% A game all the time, especially in front of your sister?
Yes. Yes. You know what? This is the thing. Like, there is a podcast. I think I haven't like there is a page that I follow, and it's a podcast where they talk about the oldest daughters from a South Asian
Mhm.
perspective,
Yeah.
and I agree with everything they say. There is so much expectation from the oldest sibling,
I
and who's the
agree.
daughter from a South Asian
Yep.
family, and you always have to carry the burden of every single thing, and we
Yeah.
always have to pay the price. And I always feel like the younger sibling had it always much easier. Like
Yeah.
life was so much easier.
I
Like
completely agree with
literally,
you. How much is the age difference between you and your sibling?
5.
Okay, we're 13 years apart, so I'm
Oh
basically a
my
second mom.
gosh.
Yeah.
My gosh, forget it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things is expecting, like, being expected to make sacrifices for them, and then
Yes.
not, and then everybody around you being like, "Oh, you're supposed to do that. You're an older sibling. Like that's your responsibility. You're her sister." Right? But
Yes.
it's so
Yes.
hard to help them understand that yes, it's my responsibility. Yes, I'm an older sister, but at the same time, I'm also my own person.
Exactly.
I
And also,
talk
I
to them.
also feel like that, like, I don't know, maybe your parents are much younger, I don't know, but with mine, I don't think they will ever get it. And I'm also the oldest among my cousins from my dad's
Same,
side.
same,
So,
exactly the same.
so basically, you just have to like lead by example, be the
Hmm.
example, set an example, and I'm like, okay, but this
Hmm.
is too much on me.
Yeah,
And
it's a lot of
and
pressure.
it's a lot of pressure, and what happened with me was that when I was growing up in the South Asian community in Italy, I was also the oldest one in the whole community. So every single parent was always looking up to me, and they were always telling their daughters, "Oh yeah, look at Urmi, like she's doing so well at school. Why are you not like her? Why don't you stay at home like her?"
Yeah,
Like I was there was so much pressure on me always to be that perfect girl that everyone had in their mind, and
Hmm.
every time you're doing something wrong, it was just seen so badly.
Yeah, yeah, I completely agree with you there.
And this whole concept of boundaries is also very hard to implement in a South Asian family because there is no such thing as boundary. My
Yeah.
time is your time, my things are your thing, like you
Yeah.
do what we say, we don't care about your schedule. Like it's hard, like boundaries within families, it's very hard. It's
Hmm.
very hard to put.
It is. It is. I agree with you there. I've seen it around me with other girls as well. I think my parents have been overall, I think they're also very young. My parents are both in their late 40s, so still
Oh,
like they're still pretty young. And with both of them, they've been very understanding with like everything. As long as I approach them and I help them understand, they're very like, okay, she's getting frustrated, we get it. And I think a big part of it is my dad because I hold like a very a very big soft spot with him.
yeah, me
So
too.
it's
Me
so
too
it's
with my
like I
dad.
can't like if somebody says no to me, I run to my dad and I'm still like where he would go on his like work trips and he would bring me presents and it's I think it's also a little hard growing up when you're so close to specifically one person out of your parents, like my dad. I've always been very close and it's like when we were in India, he would go on these work trips. He'd come home, like he'd go to Hong Kong or like Singapore and stuff, and he would bring me back little goodies.
Hmm.
But we moved here, and I think right around when I turned 14, 15, it stopped. And that's also normal because I stopped getting super, super excited about it because I was 15 and I'm not gonna get excited over chocolate, right? So so it just, I think growing up and then getting to that certain point and looking back and seeing, oh my God, like this doesn't happen anymore. Like this is a realization I literally had like 2 days ago that when my dad goes on work trips now, he doesn't bring me back anything. And that's normal because what 22-year-old girl gets chocolates from her dad when he goes on a work trip, right?
Hmm.
So it's like
Hmm.
yeah, it's hard growing up in a South Asian family, I think overall.
And I can relate to you in a lot of things because I also have a very special bond with my father. Um, and I feel like I can have that open conversation with him rather than my mother.
Hmm.
And and so I can relate to you in that sense. Like I can relate to how special it is the relationship with your father because I felt the same way um with my father as well. But it's also the dynamics can be complicated because there is this
Yeah.
added layer of being South Asian,
Hmm.
always abiding by the rules of the culture. And so I don't know. It's I get it. I get how you feel because I feel the same way. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to thank you so much for joining me today and for taking out your precious time and your
Okay.
insights. And I'm so happy we had this conversation. I think we have a
Yes.
lot in common,
Yes.
and I want to continue this. And I hope we'll have you for another for another episode soon.
Yes.